A fighter who has taken the life of an opponent in the ring gets a job as a bouncer in a roadside cafe. He fights back against a group of bikers, unaware that the real problem, named the Notorious, is behind them, ready to wipe out everyone in his path. A former UFC fighter decides to make some money by participating in an underground fight without rules. As soon as he enters the ring, the opponent gets scared and runs away, not wanting to lose and chickens away. Frankie, the owner of a roadside cafe, offers Dalton a job, but he refuses. Even a knife in his stomach doesn't stop a man from making plans that don't include moving to the Florida Keys. A little later, Dalton decides to take his own life and stops on the train tracks. At the last moment, he changes his mind and miraculously escapes, noticing the business card of the owner of the cafe in front of his nose. Dalton realizes that he has nothing else to do here and decides to accept Frankie's offer. Taking a bus, the former fighter goes to the Florida Keys, where he meets a cute and educated teenage girl. Charlie works in a local bookstore with his father Stephen and knows a lot about the city. The family presents the guest with a book and points out where to find a roadside cafe with the not particularly original name Roadhouse. Once in the cafe and ordering a cup of coffee, Dalton meets Billy, a local bouncer, who is struggling to cope with his duties. As soon as it gets dark outside, there are more and more drunk men in the bar, ready to get into a fight for every little thing. Soon, Dell and his friends appear at the bar, thugs of the local group boss, regularly scaring the Roadhouse, Frankie, and visitors. Knowing that no one will tell them anything, the guys behave brazenly and openly provoke everyone who gets in their way to conflict. Billy can't stand up to Dell because he's stronger, and he's surrounded by other guys who can bury a budding bouncer. Dalton decides to step in and invites the crowd outside for a private chat. Dell ignores the former fighter, but he provokes the guys, promising to cripple their motorcycles. Once the crowd is out on the street, Dalton offers to resolve the conflict peacefully and also specifies how far away the hospital is and whether the bad guys have a medical insurance policy. Della is angered by all these questions, and 5 bad boys attack Dalton. Mocking the destroyers, the fighter hits them with his palm. The guys take the slaps as a humiliation and don't agree to a truce. Taking this as an act of aggression, Dalton severely punishes the bad guys, causing them grievous bodily harm. Being not only strong, but also restrained, the former fighter takes a car to carefully take the guys to the hospital. Here, Dalton meets the charming Ellie, a nurse who boldly reacts to the appearance of guys in the walls of the hospital. Noticing a wound on the fighter's things, Ellie offers medical attention and treats Dalton's wound. A little later, the fighter returns to the roadside cafe and agrees to become the new bouncer. He has nowhere to live and doesn't want to stay in a hotel, so Frankie offers to stay in her late uncle's boat. Spending the night in a boat isn't not easy for Dalton because he has a nightmare from his past. Laura thoughtfully visits the new bouncer living on the boat to bring him breakfast. On his way to the bookstore, Dalton notices that the locals greet him by name. As it turned out, rumors spread very quickly. Here, and in just one night, he managed to become the most popular person in the city. Charlie's the only one who doesn't know anything about Dalton, but that's fine with him. The girl turns out to be very smart and brave, but at the same time, a lively shop owner. After her mother left this world, she became a support and supported her father. Noticing the guys, she is ready to pounce on them with a bat, but the bikers drive away, seeing Dalton behind her. A little later, the guys go to the yacht of the group boss to report on their failure. Ben Brandt wants to take over the bar at any cost, and has been sending his people there for several months, but they can't get results. Freaking out over this, Brandt beats up the ship's captain as he led him into a storm, because of which Barber cannot finish shaving the bad guys. Meanwhile, Dalton becomes not only a bouncer, but also a teacher for Billy. Noticing a fight between 2 customers, he warns that one of them has a knife and explains how to act in this situation. Billy takes a step back and knocks out the customer with a knife, then throws him out into the street. Dalton is completely satisfied with this, because he receives money and in fact does nothing, just keeping an eye on the order in a roadside cafe. Realizing that security needs to be better, Dalton finds a former boxer, Reef, who is ready to become the 3rd bouncer. Reef and Billy do a better job than before, which makes the bar more relaxed and cozy. As Dalton walks a drunk customer outside, he spots Dell and the bikers nearby. They do not approach the cafe, but prepare an insidious plan that will allow to achieve results. The next morning, Dalton meets Ellie at breakfast. The girl warns the stranger that their city didn't live, but survived, because even the police will not help here. The former fighter is not afraid of anything, which makes the nurse sympathetic. In the evening, Dalton receives his paycheck and decides to take a walk. On the way home, he is hit by a pickup truck, and it becomes clear that this is not an accident. Dell backs out and sacrifices his girlfriend's car to try to take Dalton's life. When the fighter gets to the boat, he meets Dell with a shotgun in his hands. Guy is ready to do anything to solve the problem with the roadside cafe, but Dalton is trickier. He easily copes with the enemy and throws him through the window overboard into the sea. Dell gives up, but it's too late because there's a hungry alligator behind him. Dalton tries to help the guy, but it's too late because he turned into a wild animal's dinner. While visiting the bookstore and talking to Charlie, Dalton tries to understand the value of the bar and why everyone wants to own it so much. At the exit, he is met by a couple of big bad guys threatening him with a gun. The former fighter breaks two fingers of one of them so that the man will not be able to shoot. Dalton decides to talk to Frankie and find out why the group wants to own a roadside cafe, but gets no answer to his question. After learning about another failure, Brant loses control of himself. He wants to build a casino on the beach, and a cafe is the only thing that prevents the plans from implementing. After learning about his nephew's inability to solve problems, Brant's uncle hires Knox, a daring and insane predator who can go to extreme measures. Meanwhile, Ellie asks Dalton out on a date in the middle of the sea and admits to liking him. The former fighter doesn't consider himself a good match for a decent girl, but the nurse isn't afraid of Dalton and knows the truth about his past. The couple brush their lips and have a good time before returning to Frankie's boat. Knox arrives in the city and behaves extremely aggressively towards Brant and his henchmen. The Notorious wants to prove his worth and asks the guy to give him one last chance to solve the problem without his intervention. At the same time, the police ask Dalton to come with them in order to give a statement about the situation that happened to Dell. It soon turns out to be a sheriff's trap. The guardian of the law works for that group and asks the new security guard of the bar to leave this city as soon as possible. When Dalton ignores the request, the police threaten him with a gun and ask him to get out of the car. As soon as the fighter submits, they try to beat him up, but Ellie appears and saves Dalton. She slaps the sheriff in the face and later confesses that it is her father who has become entangled with the local group. The Notorious decides to act even more brazenly and sends several guys to the bookstore. In the evening, he shows up at the bar and talks to Dalton alone, suggesting that he get out of town as soon as possible. Brant knows that the fighter was outstanding until he took the life of his best friend in the arena. Frankie spots the man and tries to chase him away, while giving the go-ahead to Knox and the other guys. Knox and a few other men go to the bar and start a mayhem. As a result, a mass brawl begins, where everyone fights with everyone. Billy and Reef are badly hurt by Knox beating them with a golf club and can no longer help Bar. When the situation becomes dire, Dalton intervenes and confronts Knox one-on-one. The invited fighter turns out to be strong enough and literally throws the bouncer out on the street. Dalton gives up and leaves, and Ellie and the police arrive on the scene to stop the anarchy and help the victims. Frankie rushes to his uncle's boat and sees Dalton packing up to leave town. She tells the truth that Brant wants to demolish the bar and build a casino, begging for her help. Dalton is not ready to get involved in all this and solve Frankie's problems with the group, as they are stronger than him. On the way to the bus, Dalton notices a burned-down bookstore and learns that Charlie and her father were brutally beaten by the guys. Realizing that they have crossed the line, Dalton decides to stay in the city and get revenge. First of all, he goes to Uncle Brant's house and finds the man who arranged the attack on Charlie and her father. With a single blow, Dalton breaks the opponent's neck, causing him to be unable to breathe and fall into an eternal sleep. On the way to the boat, the bouncer meets one of the bad guy who has taken the path of correction. He reveals everything he knows about Brant's plans and leaves town to start a new life. At dawn, Dalton catches a corrupt cop carrying a huge crate of cash. Dalton decides to frame him and make him guilty of the crime. After taking the deputy's gun and firing it at the dead man's body, Dalton hits the cop in the head to cause short-term memory loss. Soon, the sheriff visits the bouncer and informs him that the deputy told him everything. Dalton made a mistake, so the police know about everything, but they won't do anything about it because Ellie was kidnapped by a bad guy. The sheriff asks to return the money to Brant because this is the only way to save Ellie. Dalton arrives on a yacht and realizes that Ellie's father and Brant are in cahoots. Despite this, the girl is really kidnapped by the group and is in one of the cabins. Noticing Knox's approach, Dalton blows up a boat filled with dynamite. The yacht is critically damaged and begins to sink. Dalton finds a nurse and helps her out by breaking a window. One of the guys tries to strangle Dalton, and Knox tries to hit him with a boat. Brand captivates Ellie and heads to the cafe. Dalton and Knox get into another fight, but the bouncer turns out to be more cunning and chases Brand. The Notorious decides to turn around and arranges a head-on collision of boats, as a result of which Knox ends up in the water, and Dalton gets on Brandt's boat and tries to beat him up. After that, the fighter and the nurse jump into the water, and the boat with the group goes on a free flight, ending up on the summer terrace of the cafe. Knox steals a pickup truck and rushes to the bar, where he, again, engages in a fight with Dalton. Knox wounds Dalton, and it seems that the fight is lost. Brant asks to finish off the fighter, but an unbalanced Knox wrings his neck. Dalton takes advantage of the moment and pulls the knife. Ellie is shocked by what has happened, and the sheriff lets Dalton escape. He soon leaves town, and Charlie's father finds a box of money that Dalton left behind. A post-credit scene shows Knox alive and escaping from the hospital after attacking the staff. Thank you for watching. We really hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. See you very soon.